Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started.
It is genetically impossible for a rose to be blue. Natural roses do not possess the gene necessary to produce the pigments called delphinidin, responsible for blue tones in many flowers. That is why for centuries, gardeners tried unsuccessfully to obtain one. In the 21st century, scientists managed to create bluish roses through genetic engineering, although their color is still closer to violet. The first person with the mutation for blue eyes had brown eyes and probably never saw anyone with blue eyes, since it takes two people with that mutation for someone to be born with that distinctive eye color. The yellow part of an egg is not the future chicken. It is food for the embryo. That part is called the yolk and contains fats, proteins, and vitamins that nourish the embryo while it develops inside the egg. The future chick forms from a small spot on the surface of the yolk called the germinal disc. Carrie Fisher did not wear underwear in Star Wars because George Lucas convinced her by arguing that in a galaxy far, far away, no one wore underwear. For every human on Earth, there are 1,500,000,000 insects. Sweet dreams. Insects represent most of the animal biodiversity on the planet and live in practically every ecosystem. Their enormous numbers are due to their rapid reproduction, small size, and great capacity to adapt to different environments. Cat originally meant dog. The word comes from the Latin catulus, which means small dog or puppy. Over time, the term evolved in different Romance languages until it became associated with domestic felines. Related words such as kitten in English or gatto in Italian also have roots linked to that ancient term. Some areas in Scotland and Japan changed the color of street lighting to blue and realized that the change made crime decrease. And it also looks great. Blue light is believed to produce a calming effect, different from white or yellow lighting. Although the studies are not conclusive, several cities tested this type of lighting in train stations and streets. There are no vegetarian snakes. They feed exclusively on other animals. All known species are carnivorous and hunt prey such as rodents, birds, eggs, fish, or even other snakes. Some kill their prey using venom, while others, such as boas and pythons, immobilize them through constriction. Wisdom teeth are gradually disappearing. Currently, 35% of people are born without these teeth, which can become a major annoyance. Scientists believe this is due to evolutionary changes in the human diet and in the size of the jaw, which today is usually smaller than that of our ancestors. Happier cows produce more milk. Simply calling a cow by its name increases milk production by 3.5%. Studies on animal behavior have shown that when cows receive more individualized treatment and less stress, their well-being improves. That condition reduces hormones related to stress and favors physiological processes that increase milk production. Anthophobia is the fear of flowers. Although it may seem strange, some people experience real anxiety when seeing or being near flowers, especially in large quantities. Like other specific phobias, it may be related to previous negative experiences or psychological associations that trigger fear responses. All the scenes that take place inside the Matrix in the movie of the same name have a green filter. This was done to make it look like everything was happening inside a computer screen. In contrast, the scenes in the real world were filmed with bluish and gray tones to visually differentiate both worlds. A pineapple can take up to 2 years to grow. The plant first produces a rosette of leaves for many months before forming the fruit in the center. After flowering, the fruit needs around 6 months to fully mature, which makes pineapple cultivation relatively slow compared with other tropical fruits. Haley Joel Osment, the child who says, "I see dead people" in The Sixth Sense, made his film debut as the son of Forrest Gump. In the 1994 movie, he plays little Forrest Gump Jr., the son of Tom Hanks's character. Years later, he achieved worldwide fame with The Sixth Sense in 1999, a role for which he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor when he was only 11 years old. Lincoln Cathedral in England was the tallest structure in the world for 249 years. It reached that position after its central tower was completed in the 14th century. It even surpassed the Great Pyramid of Giza in height until the cathedral's spire collapsed during a storm in the 16th century. There is a dwarf planet beyond the orbit of Neptune called Haumea. Its rotation is so fast that it has the shape of an ellipsoid. Basically, it is an egg-shaped planet. It completes one rotation on its axis in less than 4 hours, an extraordinary speed for an object of its size. It also has 2 small moons and a thin ring system discovered by astronomers in 2017. In 1958, Ford designed a car called the Ford Nucleon, which was expected to have a miniature nuclear reactor in the back to generate its energy. The developers of the game Fallout were inspired by this concept for the vehicles that appear in the acclaimed series. 29 days after the sinking of the Titanic, a movie about the events was made that included the participation of a real survivor of the disaster. The film was titled Saved from the Titanic and starred Dorothy Gibson, an actress who had truly escaped the tragedy. The movie premiered in 1912 and recreated her experience on board, although today it is considered a lost film. The national anthem of Spain has no official lyrics. The Royal March is one of the oldest national anthems in the world and has been used since the 18th century. Over time, several lyrics have been proposed, but none has been officially adopted, so normally only the music is performed during ceremonies and sporting events. Most Muppets are left-handed because the puppeteers use their dominant hand to control the mouth and the other hand to control the arms. Since many puppeteers are right-handed, they insert that hand inside the character's head to move the mouth precisely. The other hand controls one of the arms using rods or gloves. In the Netherlands, 8 prisons were closed because of a lack of criminals. We can send them some, do not worry. The decline in crime, together with reforms in the justice system, caused several prisons to become practically empty. Some of these facilities have even been used to house prisoners from other European countries. The strange trombone-like sound in Inception is based on a slowed-down version of a song by Edith Piaf. The idea is that the same song would sound like that in the background when a person is dreaming. Composer Hans Zimmer took the song Non, je ne regrette rien and stretched and digitally distorted it until turning it into that deep sound that repeats throughout the entire movie. San Marino has 8 times more doctors per person than any other country in the world. This small country surrounded by Italy has a very extensive healthcare system relative to its population, which is only a few tens of thousands of inhabitants. That is why the ratio of doctors per person is extraordinarily high. A teenager from Malawi named William Kamkwamba learned how to build a windmill from scrap to generate electricity in his village. Later, he built a larger one to bring water. He learned all of this from books he read in the local library. When he died in 1891, John Davy was the only person who spoke Cornish. He had kept the language alive because he spoke it to his cat. Cornish was a Celtic language spoken in Cornwall in the southwest of England and had been disappearing for centuries due to the dominance of English. At the beginning of the 20th century, a revitalization movement began that allowed the language to have speakers again and programs to teach it. A History of Violence was the last movie to be released on VHS in 2005. By that time, the format was already practically dead, replaced by DVD and soon after by Blu-ray. For decades, VHS tapes dominated the home market from the late 1970s to the early 2000s, when the transition to digital formats became inevitable. Researchers in Tokyo are developing nanocrystal technology capable of carrying molecules that kill cancer cells. With this nano-robot therapy, it will be possible to operate on a person without opening them. These tiny systems can be designed to travel through the bloodstream and release medication directly into a tumor, which could reduce damage to healthy tissue and improve the effectiveness of cancer treatments. In an intelligence test, an incentive of $10 caused the average results to increase by 20 IQ points. The experiment showed that motivation can greatly influence performance on these tests. When participants knew they could receive a financial reward, they tended to try harder and solve more problems correctly. A World of Warcraft player named Bradster has 36 accounts and attacks himself on 11 computers to level up. This type of practice is known among players as multi-boxing, where one person controls several characters at the same time. Some use programs or special keyboards to synchronize actions and advance faster within the game. The creators of the movie Beverly Hills Cop invented a technology called Satellite Location System. Years later, it actually became real, the common GPS. In the film, the device is mentioned as an advanced way to track vehicles from space. In real life, the Global Positioning System was developed by the United States military and began becoming available for civilian use during the 1990s. Only 35% of the followers on Twitter of an average person are human. The rest are evil robots. Many of those automated profiles are accounts designed for advertising, link distribution, or automatic content generation, which has led platforms to develop systems to detect and remove bots. Rhinoceroses communicate using their droppings. Do not ask how. In reality, they create piles of dung called middens that they use as signaling points. The smell transmits information about territory, reproductive status, and the identity of the individual, allowing other rhinos to know who passed by even days later. Because of the long take style in the movie Birdman, Edward Norton and Michael Keaton entertained themselves by counting how many times the other actors made mistakes, forcing the scene to be repeated. Emma Stone made the most mistakes. Zach Galifianakis made the fewest, and when he did make mistakes, he sometimes improvised to avoid stopping the scene. In the first Spider-Man movie in 2002, the spider that bit Peter Parker was a real spider similar to a Black Widow. It was anesthetized and painted red and blue to film the scene. The effects team used several takes to capture the exact moment when the arachnid walked across the actor's hand. Later, digital details were added to make it appear like a genetically modified species. The first space shuttle was going to be called Constitution, but after thousands of letters from Star Trek fans, the name was changed to Enterprise, like the famous ship from the television series. President Gerald Ford approved the change in 1976, and the shuttle was publicly unveiled with several actors from the series present. Highlighters are usually yellow because they do not leave a gray shadow when a photocopy is made. The fluorescent tone reflects a lot of light and allows the text to remain readable when copying documents. That is why this color became the standard when these markers began to become popular in offices and schools. Salvador Dalí was extremely afraid of grasshoppers for some reason. The artist himself said that the fear began in his childhood after some children threw one in his face. The phobia was so intense that he even avoided illustrations or images of the insect, and in some of his surrealist works, disturbing representations of them appear. The character Apollo Creed from the movie Rocky is based on Muhammad Ali. The fictional boxer shares with him the charismatic style, the confidence in front of the public, and the spectacular way of promoting his fights. Sylvester Stallone himself has mentioned that he was inspired by Ali's personality and fighting style when creating Rocky's original rival. Elephants know to approach humans when they are looking for help if they are injured or sick. They can find humans even over very large distances. Cases have been documented in Africa and Asia where elephants approach villages or ranger stations when they have wounds, traps, or thorns embedded in them. Their great memory and ability to recognize people allow them to remember where they can find help. The 1996 movie Twister was the first to be released on DVD. The format officially debuted that same year and promised better image quality, interactive menus, and additional material. Over time, the DVD almost completely replaced VHS and became the main home movie format for more than a decade. Seahorses are the only fish with a neck. Unlike most fish, their head is tilted and separated from the body by a flexible area that allows them to move it up and down. This particular shape also helps them quickly suck in small crustaceans when feeding. The Dark Knight made more money in its first 6 days in theaters than Batman Begins made in total. The enormous success of the film in 2008 was partly due to the huge public expectation and Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, which became one of the most memorable performances in modern cinema. Bubble wrap was first produced in a garage in New Jersey in 1957 when inventors were trying to make textured wallpaper. Engineers Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavon glued 2 shower curtains together, creating air pockets between them. Although the wallpaper did not work, they later discovered that the material was perfect for protecting fragile objects during transport. In 1969, the brand Honeywell launched the H316, the first home computer. It cost more than $10,000. In reality, it was a simplified version of an industrial mini-computer and did not have a monitor or keyboard like modern ones. Users entered instructions through switches and lights on the front panel. When Michael Jackson was planning his comeback in 2007, he wanted to build a giant robotic replica of himself in Las Vegas that would wander through the desert and shoot lasers from its eyes to attract the attention of tourists. In one of the ruins in Indiana Jones' Raiders of the Lost Ark, you can see drawings of C-3PO and R2-D2. The detail appears carved into a wall inside the Well of Souls. It was included as a small wink between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, who used to hide Star Wars references in some of their productions. The I'm Feeling Lucky feature in the Google search engine allows users to skip the results page and go directly to the first website that appears in the search. Because it avoids displaying the advertisements on that page, It was estimated in 2007 that the button cost Google around $110 million per year in lost advertising revenue. At that time, it was calculated that approximately 1% of searches used this option. Trains in Japan are so punctual that even if they arrive 5 minutes late, the staff must apologize to the passengers. When a train is an hour late or more, the apology even appears in the news. Railway companies also provide delay certificates, so passengers can justify arriving late to work or school. The largest crocodile in the world and the smallest man in the world are from the same island in the Philippines. The crocodile Lolong, captured on the island of Mindanao, measured more than approximately 20 feet and was considered the largest in captivity. The smallest recorded man, Junrei Balawing, was also born on that same island. Since 1991, there had been plans to make a movie of The Simpsons. The first idea for the script became the episode where Bart and Lisa go to Camp Krusty. That episode, titled Camp Krusty, was originally intended as the basis for a longer story, but the team decided to adapt it into a regular episode before the film project moved forward. A study showed that people believe one energy drink is better and more effective than another after drinking it simply because the price is higher, even though they contain exactly the same ingredients. Misophonia is the terror and anger caused by hearing the sound of people eating. People who suffer from it can experience intense irritation when hearing repetitive noises such as chewing, slurping, or typing. Although its origin is still being studied, some research suggests that it is related to a particular way the brain processes sound. In Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, when there are shots of an asteroid field, you can see strange objects flying among the space rocks like a shoe or a potato. The special effects artists used everyday objects painted and filmed up close to create the asteroids, since it was cheaper and faster than building complex models. In the pre-medieval period, the word legendary emerged, meaning things chosen to be read. At that time, reading and writing were uncommon, so all written things existed because they were truly important. The word comes from the Latin legenda, meaning things that must be read, and it was used especially for stories about the lives of saints that were read in monasteries or during religious celebrations. Over time, the term began to be associated with extraordinary or memorable stories. It has been observed that some ducks stay floating in the sections where the water flows fastest in rivers, and when they reach the end, they go back to repeat the trip. Biologists believe this behavior may be a form of animal play. The ducks use the current like a small natural slide and repeat the ride several times. Joss Whedon, the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and director of The Avengers, co-wrote the script for Toy Story. During the development of the film, he helped refine the dialogue and better define the personalities of characters such as Buzz Lightyear and Mr. Potato Head. Although his work was not always publicly credited at the time, his contribution was recognized later. There is at least 10 times more crime on television than in real life. Various studies on television programming have shown that crimes appear much more frequently in series and news programs than in real statistics. This overexposure can influence public perception, making many people believe that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. Martha Stewart ended her relationship with Anthony Hopkins after seeing him in the movie The Silence of the Lambs. She said in an interview that after seeing Hopkins' performance as Hannibal Lecter, she could not stop associating him with that character. The performance was so intense that it was impossible for her to see him the same way. The name of the country, Mali, means hippopotamus in the native language of that place. The name comes from the ancient Mali Empire, a powerful civilization of West Africa that flourished between the 13th and 16th centuries. In some interpretations of the Manding language, Mali is related to the word hippopotamus, an animal associated with strength and power. At no point is the word mafia mentioned in the movie The Godfather. This is because the real mafia asked that it be that way. During production, representatives of the Italian-American Civil Rights League pressured the studio to avoid the use of certain terms. In the end, it was decided to use expressions like family or the organization instead of the word mafia. In Japan, a person's blood type is treated in a way similar to zodiac signs. Being asked what blood type you are is very common, and there are even horoscope-like descriptions for each variation. This idea became popular in the 20th century, and many people believe that types A, B, O, or AB reflect personality traits. Although it is widely known culturally, there is no scientific evidence supporting that relationship. Koala fingerprints are almost identical to human fingerprints. They have even interfered with crime scene investigations. So now you know, if you are a criminal, you should bring a koala as an accomplice. Even under a microscope, they can be very difficult to distinguish from human ones because they show very similar patterns of arches, loops, and whorls. Anonymous sent thousands of completely black faxes to the Church of Scientology so they would run out of all their ink cartridges. This action occurred during online protests against the organization in the late 2000s. The idea was to saturate their fax machines and cause them expenses in paper and ink. Originally, the time machine in Back to the Future was going to be a refrigerator. The writers changed the idea because they feared children might try to climb into one after seeing the movie. They ultimately chose the DeLorean, a car with gull-wing doors that became one of the most recognizable vehicles in cinema. Bacteria and amoebas are so different from each other that an amoeba is more similar to a person than to a bacterium. This is because amoebas, like humans, belong to the group of eukaryotes, organisms whose cells have a nucleus and complex internal structures. Bacteria, on the other hand, are prokaryotes and lack these cellular structures. The King of Hearts is the only king in the deck that does not have a mustache. In most traditional card designs, this character appears clean-shaven, unlike the other kings. He is also usually shown with a sword behind his head, which is why he is sometimes nicknamed the Suicide King in the English deck. The owner of the domain Windows2000.com was named Bob, and Microsoft happened to own Bob.com. They reached an agreement to exchange the web addresses. The site Windows 2000 was owned by a designer named Bob Kirstein, and when Microsoft launched its operating system, Windows 2000, they negotiated the domain exchange to avoid legal conflicts. O.J. Simpson was going to be the lead actor in Terminator, but the studio became convinced that no one could see him as a killer. Ironies of life. The role finally went to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who transformed the character into one of the most iconic villains in science fiction cinema since its release in 1984. All the internet weighs the same as a large strawberry. This curiosity is based on a physical estimate of the weight of the electrons that store information in the world's servers. Although the amount of data is enormous, the total mass associated with those electrons would be extremely small, comparable to that of a strawberry. 12% of all Coca-Cola in the world is consumed at breakfast. Very healthy. In many countries, the drink is consumed in the morning as a companion to food or even as a substitute for coffee. The enormous global consumption of the brand means that even small daily habits represent gigantic quantities of bottles. Any member of the French Foreign Legion wounded while defending France can immediately apply to receive French nationality, since he would be French by spilled blood. This principle is known as French by spilled blood and has been part of the Legion's tradition for a long time. Many foreign soldiers have obtained citizenship after being wounded in combat. The Breakfast Club was going to have sequels every 10 years where the club would reunite, but the plans fell apart because Judd Nelson and John Hughes hated each other. The idea was to show how the characters had changed over time and how they faced adult life. However, personal and professional conflicts prevented the project from moving forward. Not sweeping the leaves that naturally fall from trees in autumn greatly helps make the soil fertile. As they decompose, the leaves turn into organic matter that enriches the soil and feeds microorganisms and insects. This natural process returns nutrients to the earth and improves the soil's ability to retain moisture. Barbara in Latin means strange woman. The word comes from the Greek term barbaros, which was used to describe people who did not speak Greek and whose language sounded incomprehensible to them. Over time, the name Barbara became popular as a female given name in many European cultures. More than 1/3 of the airports in the world are in the United States. This is partly due to the enormous size of the country and the large number of domestic flights. Many small cities have regional airports, making the United States air network one of the densest on the planet. Manuel de Oliveira was the oldest active film director in the world until before his death in 2015. His first movies date back to the silent film era. Born in 1908 in Portugal, he continued directing movies even after turning 100 years old. His final work premiered when he was more than 105 years old, making him a unique figure in the history of cinema. Bird feathers generally weigh twice as much as their bones. Although their bones are hollow and very light to facilitate flight, feathers cover much of the body and represent a considerable proportion of their total weight. They also serve important functions such as thermal insulation, flight, and display during courtship. Humans and elephants are the only animals with a chin. In humans, the chin is a bony protrusion on the lower jaw that does not clearly appear in other primates. Elephants show a similar structure on the front of their lower jaw that resembles a chin, something uncommon among mammals. Rats can compress themselves to enter a hole only about 3/4 of an inch wide, making it almost impossible to have a building completely free of rats. Their skeleton is very flexible, and if their head can pass through an opening, the rest of the body can almost always pass through as well. They also have very strong incisors, capable of gnawing through wood, plastic, and even some metals. More than 80% of the films made before 1929 are lost due to the passage of time. No copies exist. Many were recorded on nitrate film, a very flammable material that also deteriorates with the years. Fires, neglect, and the lack of interest in preserving cinema during its early years caused the disappearance of thousands of works from the silent film era. Andy Warhol used to go to hair salons to have his wig trimmed. After a month, he would return with a longer wig and act as if his hair had grown. The artist was famous for his sense of humor and for constantly playing with his own public image, something that fit perfectly with his artistic style and his interest in celebrity culture. All living things can be anesthetized, even plants. Although anesthesia has been used since the 19th century, it is still not completely understood how it works. Experiments have shown that certain anesthetic substances can temporarily cause plants to stop responding to stimuli, such as closing their leaves or moving toward light, and they recover their activity when the effect disappears. A Norwegian boy escaped from a wolf by playing a song by the band Megadeth on his cell phone. The boy was walking through the forest when the animal came too close. To scare it away, he played music at full volume from his phone, and the unexpected noise made the wolf retreat so the boy could return home safely. Apollo 13, Armageddon, and Around the World in 80 Days are among the movies carried on board the International Space Station. Astronauts usually bring a small digital library with movies, series, and music for their free time. Many have space or adventure themes, and sometimes they are watched together during rest periods to help maintain morale during missions that can last several months. John Travolta turned down the lead role in the movie Forrest Gump. Later, he regretted his decision. The role was eventually played by Tom Hanks, who won the Academy Award for Best Actor for that performance in 1995. The film became a huge box office success and one of the most remembered classics of cinema. Eskimos use refrigerators to prevent their food and drinks from freezing. In Arctic regions, outside temperatures can be so low that food freezes easily. That is why people sometimes use ordinary refrigerators as a kind of insulated box that keeps products at a slightly higher temperature and prevents them from becoming completely solid. The Academy refused to nominate the 1982 movie Tron for the Visual Effects Award because they said it was cheating by using computers. At that time, the use of computer-generated graphics was something completely new in cinema. Over time, that technology became standard, and today, it dominates most visual effects in Hollywood. Sylvester Stallone became so poor that he had to sell his dog for $50. A week later, he managed to sell the script for Rocky and went back to buy his dog for $3,000. It seems he was not very good at business. The dog was named Butkus and had been his companion during the hardest years. He even appears in the first Rocky movie as the protagonist's pet, a small, real detail that became immortalized in film history. Babies exposed to sign language imitate it and remain silent even though they may be able to speak. Studies have shown that some babies can learn to communicate through gestures before fully developing speech. This allows them to express simple needs while their verbal language is still developing. Min-sik Choi had to eat 4 live octopuses to film the famous scene in Old Boy. The actor, who is Buddhist, had to go pray immediately afterward to redeem himself. The scene was repeated several times to get the correct take, which turned that moment into one of the most shocking and talked about scenes in South Korean cinema. In 2004, a bottle of wine costing only $2 defeated 2,300 other wines in an international competition. The wine was from the Australian brand known as 2 Buck Chuck, sold in supermarkets at a very low price. The results surprised many experts and showed that price does not always determine perceived quality in a blind tasting. The name of Edward Norton's character in Fight Club is never mentioned in the movie. Throughout the story, other characters simply call him narrator, since the plot unfolds from his point of view and through his voiceover. In the original 1996 novel written by Chuck Palahniuk, exactly the same thing happens, reinforcing the idea that the character represents an anonymous identity within modern society. Ants can survive inside a running microwave oven. They are small enough to avoid the radiation, but that does not mean you should put ants in the microwave. Do not do it. The 1999 to 2000 hunting season was the worst for hunters because the forests filled with enthusiastic fans of the movie The Blair Witch Project. Many people visited the forests of Maryland to search for clues related to the story of the film. The large number of visitors even forced local authorities to monitor some areas. According to astronauts, moon dust smells like gunpowder. Although in space there is no air to perceive smells, astronauts noticed the scent when they returned to the lunar module after walking on the surface. The dust stuck to their suits and, once inside the cabin, released a smell similar to burned gunpowder or hot metal. Some parts of Antarctica have not had snow or rain for more than 2 million years. These areas are known as the McMurdo Dry Valleys and are among the driest places on the planet. The extreme conditions of cold and wind prevent moisture from accumulating and forming precipitation. Cars, despite being Pixar's least good movie, is the most successful franchise from the studio. It has generated more than $10 billion in sales, counting only merchandise. Much of the success comes from toys, clothing, and children's products inspired by characters like Lightning McQueen and Mater, which are very popular with kids. The Maya used to launch nests of killer wasps at their enemies with catapults during war. It was a primitive form of biological weapon. Warriors collected nests of very aggressive wasps or bees and hurled them toward rival troops during battles. The chaos caused by the enraged insects could disorganize the enemy and make an attack easier. Samuel L. Jackson was perfect for the character of Nick Fury in The Avengers because in the comics, that character is actually based on him. In Marvel's Ultimate Comic line, published in the early 2000s, the artists redesigned the character with the appearance of the actor himself. They even included a reference where Fury mentions that he would like to be played by Samuel L. Jackson in a movie. In Cologne, Germany, it is common to donate used Christmas trees to the local zoo. An elephant can eat up to 3 of them a day and can also use them to clean its teeth. The keepers also use them as environmental enrichment for other animals, since the trunks and branches can be used for playing, scratching, or exploring. After Switzerland, the place with the most gold reserves per capita in the world is Lebanon. Much of that gold was accumulated over decades as financial backing for the country. The reserves are stored in the central bank and in vaults abroad, and for years they have been considered an important guarantee for Lebanon's economic stability. When a coal mine catches fire, it can burn for years. There are thousands of these fires happening right now. Some can continue for decades underground because the coal keeps feeding the fire slowly. These fires release polluting gases and are very difficult to extinguish due to the depth and extent of the tunnels. While recording the voice of the genie in Aladdin, Robin Williams frequently received calls from Steven Spielberg, who was working on Schindler's List. He would put the call on speaker so Williams could tell jokes to the cast and cheer them up a little. Spielberg later explained that the atmosphere on set was very heavy because of the film's subject, and that those brief humorous calls helped the team relieve emotional tension. Humans have been hunters and gatherers for 99% of our existence. Agriculture began only about 10 or 12,000 years ago, while modern humans have existed for approximately 300,000 years. For most of that time, communities lived from hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants. Mount Everest, the highest mountain on the planet, grows every year because the Indian subcontinent is pushing into China. Why can't we all just get along? In reality, the Indian tectonic plate continues moving slowly northward and presses against the Eurasian plate. That geological collision lifts the Himalaya mountain range a few millimeters each year, although erosion also reduces part of that growth. On September 28, 2006, the city of Reykjavik and its surrounding areas in Iceland turned off all public lighting for half an hour, while an astronomer talked about the stars and constellations on the radio. The initiative aimed to allow residents to observe the night sky with less light pollution. During those minutes, many people went outside to look at constellations and learn to identify them. When Charles Chaplin received his honorary Oscar, he received a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in the history of these awards. The tribute took place in 1972, when Chaplin returned to the United States after decades living in Europe. For years, he had been practically banned in Hollywood because of political controversies, so the recognition was seen as a historic reconciliation. Three-dimensional printing is a technology that has existed for 30 years and has only recently become popular because the patents have expired or are about to expire. The first three-dimensional printing systems appeared in the 1980s. When several key patents began to expire, more companies and hobbyists were able to develop their own printers. There are at least 38 places called Springfield in the United States, but the Springfield of The Simpsons is based on Springfield, Oregon. The creator of the series, Matt Groening, grew up in the nearby city of Portland and took many details from that area for the show. He also chose the name Springfield because it is very common and allows many people to imagine that the town could be their own. In the oceans, there are giant bioluminescent creatures similar to worms. They're believed to be able to reach the size of a blue whale. In many cases, they are colonies of organisms called siphonophores, which are actually made up of thousands of individuals that function as a single organism. Some have been observed glowing in the darkness of the ocean and reaching extraordinary lengths. Jurassic Park, Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, and The Shawshank Redemption were in theaters at the same time in October 1994. That year is considered one of the strongest in the history of modern cinema. All four movies eventually became highly influential classics, and, over time, three of them were included in the United States National Film Registry because of their cultural importance. In Sudan, there are more pyramids than in Egypt. Most are located in the ancient region of Nubia and were built by the kings of the Kingdom of Kush more than 2,000 years ago. Although they are smaller than the Egyptian ones, there are more than 200 in Sudan, especially in archaeological sites such as Meroe and Nuri. Beavers have transparent eyelids so they can see underwater with their eyes closed. In reality, they possess a special membrane called the nictitating membrane that acts like a kind of third eyelid. This translucent layer protects their eyes while they swim and allows them to keep partially seeing underwater while they search for branches or build their dams. By the year 2020, the number of Chinese men of marriageable age will exceed the number of women in the same situation by 30 million. This imbalance is partly related to decades of cultural preference for sons and the former one-child policy. Demographers have warned that this difference may have important social effects. Neither Ian McKellen nor Patrick Stewart knew how to play chess when they filmed X-Men. Despite that they had to record several scenes in front of the board portraying Magneto and Professor Xavier as if they were experienced players. During filming, they received basic guidance on how to move the pieces naturally, although the final result relied more on acting than on real strategy. Wi-Fi was developed using technology employed in a failed experiment to detect mini black holes. Part of the technological foundation came from methods created by radio astronomers to analyze weak signals from space. Australian researchers adapted those signal processing techniques to improve wireless data transmission. Rhinoceroses can run faster than a human, but weigh about the same as a pickup truck. And since you asked, yes, they communicate by smelling the droppings of other rhinos to stay with the correct herd. These animals can reach speeds close to 31 miles per hour, despite weighing more than approximately 4,400 pounds. They also use piles of dung called middens, where different rhinos leave chemical signals that indicate territory, identity, and reproductive status. There is a mountain in Australia called Mount Disappointment. It was given that name because the first explorers who climbed to the top realized the view was not very good and wanted to reflect their feelings in the name. The DVD of Finding Nemo is the best-selling DVD of all time. It sold more than 40 million copies. The enormous success of the release occurred shortly after the film premiered in theaters in 2003. For years, it was an essential title in many home collections and helped establish the DVD format as the main way to watch movies at home. In the United States, only 5% of the world's population lives there, but it has 25% of the entire prison population. This statistic is often mentioned in debates about criminal policies and justice systems. For decades, the country has maintained one of the highest incarceration rates on the planet. A Norwegian student spent $27 on bitcoins and forgot about them. A few years later, he realized their value had risen to $886,000. The story happened around 2013, when the young man checked an old purchase made in 2009 while researching cryptocurrencies for a project. With the money, he was able to buy an apartment in Oslo and still keep some bitcoins. According to analysts of Academy Award acceptance speeches, Steven Spielberg has been thanked more times when someone receives an Oscar than God. The director has been a central figure in Hollywood since the 1970s and has produced or directed many influential films. That is why his name frequently appears in the acknowledgments of winners who worked with him. Nail polish contains nitrocellulose, a low-power explosive along with other toxic compounds. Nitrocellulose is also used in lacquers, paints, and formerly in photographic film. In nail polish, it forms a hard and shiny layer when it dries. It is usually mixed with solvents and plasticizers that allow the product to spread easily over the nail. The most common last name in the world is Chen. It is especially common in China and in Chinese communities around the planet. Because of the enormous size of the Chinese population, last names such as Chen, Li, or Wang are among the most widespread in the world and can be shared by tens of millions of people. In Antigua and Barbuda, lizard soup is used as a cure for asthma, as long as the patient is not told what it is made from. This remedy is part of popular traditions in some Caribbean communities. Although there is no scientific evidence of its effectiveness, the belief has been passed down for generations as part of local traditional medicine. The snow-covered maze in The Shining was actually built on a set without air conditioning, and it was very hot inside. To create the appearance of snow, they used materials such as foam, salt, and special movie dust. During filming, the studio lights raised the temperature significantly, so the actors had to perform wearing heavy coats while they were actually sweating. A microwave oven consumes the same amount of energy running its digital clock as it does heating food. This is because the clock stays on all the time, while the magnetron runs only a few minutes a day. In many models, the clock, control circuits, and display consume electricity continuously throughout the entire year, so that small, constant use can end up adding up to energy consumption similar to several minutes of daily cooking. In 20% of all car accidents in Sweden, deer are involved. This is because the country has a very large population of moose and deer that often cross roads, especially in forested areas. During autumn, the risk increases because it is mating season, and the animals move around more, which has led to the installation of thousands of warning signs on the roads. In 2007, a man in Bosnia faked his death to see how many people would attend his funeral. Only his mother went. The man, named Marko Markovic according to press reports, organized the fake funeral after publishing a notice of his own death in the local newspaper. When he saw the low attendance, he revealed the prank and commented ironically that at least his mother had shown up. Filming The Hunger Games: Catching Fire caused Jennifer Lawrence to become temporarily deaf in one ear. The problem occurred during an action scene in the water when a powerful jet of water struck her ear. The pressure damaged her eardrum for a while, and she had to continue filming with that discomfort for several weeks. The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has several dogs as pets. Once he brought one to a meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel to bother her, knowing that she is afraid of dogs because one bit her when she was a child. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, was the first owner of the phone number 888-88888, but he got tired of it when he started receiving more than 100 wrong calls a day. Most of them were babies playing with phones. James Cameron had no money when he wrote the script for Terminator and sold the rights for only $1, but with the condition that he had to direct it. With that agreement, he managed to convince the producers to finance the movie while keeping creative control. The success of the 1984 film ended up launching his career as one of the most important directors in Hollywood. The bite of a tiger shark is capable of breaking the hard shell of a turtle, but that does not mean they enjoy doing it. This shark has very strong serrated teeth and one of the most powerful bites among fish. Its diet is extremely varied and includes fish, turtles, seabirds, and other animals. 8 of the 88 elements that occur naturally on the planet were discovered in the same mine in Sweden. It is the Ytterby mine near Stockholm, famous in the history of chemistry. Several rare earth elements come from there, such as yttrium, ytterbium, terbium, and erbium, whose names even derive from the place itself. There is a town called OK in Oklahoma, United States. On maps, it reads, OK, OK. The small town is located near the Arkansas River and has a small population. Its curious name often draws attention because it looks more like a confirmation written on the map than the name of a place. Gravity cost more than India's Mars exploration program. The film by Alfonso Cuarón, released in 2013, had a budget close to $100 million. In comparison, India's Mars orbiter mission cost around $74 million and successfully placed a probe into Martian orbit on its first attempt. Steve Jobs was half Syrian. His biological father, Abdul Fattah Jandali, was born in Syria and came to the United States as a university student. Jobs was given up for adoption shortly after he was born and grew up in California with Paul and Clara Jobs, who raised him and supported his interests in electronics and technology from a very young age. Vincent van Gogh sold only one painting during his lifetime, The Red Vineyard. The painting is currently in the Pushkin Museum in Russia. It was purchased at an exhibition in Brussels in 1890 by the artist Anna Buch. After his death, his works began to gain recognition, and today they are among the most valuable in modern art. William Herschel, the discoverer of Uranus, lived to the age of 84, the same number of years it takes Uranus to complete its orbit around the Sun. Herschel discovered the planet in 1781 using a telescope he had built himself, expanding the number of known planets for the first time since antiquity. This is Spinal Tap is the only movie on IMDb that can be rated up to 11 stars. This comes from the joke where the band's guitarist shows that his amplifiers go up to volume 11. The joke became so famous that the expression, "turn it up to 11," is now used to describe something pushed to the maximum. Only 12 rats enter Alberta, Canada each year, and they are quickly exterminated by pest control before they can leave offspring. Alberta is the largest rat-free region in the world. Since the 1950s, the government has maintained a very strict border surveillance program to detect and eliminate any rodent that tries to establish itself. The largest frog in the world is larger than the smallest antelope in the world. The African Goliath frog can measure more than 11 inches and weigh more than approximately 6.5 pounds. The smallest antelope is the dik-dik, which, although taller, weighs only a few kilograms, making the two animals surprisingly comparable in size. Most mobile phones sold in Japan are waterproof because young Japanese women use them so much that they even take them into the bath. In the early 2000s, manufacturers began making them water-resistant because many users wanted to keep using their phones even in the bathtub. Over time, this feature became standard, and today, many Japanese models can withstand splashes or immersion. Christopher Lee was the only member of the Lord of the Rings cast who had actually met J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer of the acclaimed novels. Lee had been a great admirer of the book since he was young and met the author in the 1950s. For years, he expressed his desire to participate in a film adaptation of the work. If inflation is taken into account, the highest-grossing movie of all time is the 1939 drama Gone with the Wind. Its original release attracted enormous audiences during years of theatrical re-releases. Adjusted to the current value of money, its box office revenue greatly surpasses most modern blockbusters. In 2004, a man in New York named Matthew Jones was arrested for doing nothing. A police officer stopped him for disorderly conduct because people had to walk around him to pass. The man stated that he was just standing there. A bacterium that lives in mealworms can transform plastic into biodegradable waste. Goodbye pollution. Scientific research has shown that certain microorganisms present in the intestines of these worms can break down materials such as polystyrene. Scientists study this process because it could help develop new biological ways to recycle plastics that are difficult to degrade. There are currently 32 closed-circuit cameras within approximately 656 feet around the apartment where George Orwell had the idea for the acclaimed novel 1984. The irony is often mentioned because the work describes a society where everyone is constantly watched by Big Brother. Half of all the pepper in the world is produced in Vietnam. The country became the world's main producer thanks to its tropical climate and large areas dedicated to cultivation. Much of that production is exported to international markets, where pepper is one of the most widely used spices. The budget of the movie Paranormal Activity was $15,000, but it ended up earning more than $190 million. Most of the money was used for basic recording equipment and very simple effects. Its enormous success showed that an effective story and word of mouth could turn an independent production into a worldwide horror film phenomenon. Arnold Schwarzenegger was paid approximately $21,000 per word for his role in Terminator 2. The actor speaks very few lines during the movie, but his physical presence and distinctive style were key to the character. His famous line, "Hasta la vista, baby," became one of the most remembered quotes in action film history. An average horse can produce up to 15 horsepower. The term horsepower was originally defined in the 18th century to compare the power of steam engines with the strength of real horses. Interestingly, a horse under maximum effort can generate much more than 1 horsepower for brief periods. In 2011, the number of web pages reached 13 billion. That is one page for every year since the Big Bang. The comparison became popular because the universe is approximately 13,800,000,000 years old. Since then, the number of websites and web pages has continued to grow enormously. Before becoming famous, Katy Perry released a Christian rock album under her real name, Katy Hudson, when she was 16 years old. It sold fewer than 200 copies. She was also a backing singer for the band POD. The 10 most venomous snake species in the world live in Australia. Among them are the inland taipan, considered the most venomous snake on the planet, and several extremely potent sea snakes. However, despite hosting so many dangerous species, Australia records relatively few deaths each year thanks to quick access to antivenoms and strict emergency medical systems. The bedroom in The Exorcist was kept refrigerated at temperatures below freezing, so cold that one day when they arrived on set, it was covered in snow. Director William Friedkin wanted the actor's breath to appear naturally on camera. To achieve this, they installed large refrigeration systems that cooled the room for hours before each scene. Socks are among the items most needed in shelters, but they are among the least donated by people. This happens because many people tend to donate used clothing, while shelters usually need new socks for hygiene reasons. Keeping feet dry and protected also helps prevent infections and skin problems. In the Norwegian army, there is a penguin that holds the rank of colonel-in-chief. It is a king penguin at the Edinburgh Zoo named Niels Olav. The tradition began in the 1970s, when the Norwegian Royal Guard adopted the bird as their official mascot. Over the years, it has been symbolically promoted several times and participates in military ceremonies. Before becoming an actor, Bruce Willis was a private investigator. During his youth, he worked various jobs while trying to break into acting, including positions as a security guard and bartender in New York. It was while working in bars in the city that he began connecting with the entertainment world and eventually got his first opportunities on television. The shortest war ever recorded was between Great Britain and Zanzibar on August 27, 1896. Zanzibar surrendered after only 38 minutes. The conflict began when a new sultan took power without British approval. The empire's fleet bombarded the royal palace, and the resistance ended almost immediately. Mexico City is the city with the most museums in the world, more than 160, and most are free on Sundays. Among them are some of the most important in Latin America, such as the National Museum of Anthropology and the Palace of Fine Arts. The tradition of free Sunday admission aims to encourage visits from students and families. Jessica Alba spent a year training in martial arts, gymnastics, and motorcycle riding for her role in the series Dark Angel. The series premiered in 2000 and was created by James Cameron. Alba played a genetically modified soldier, so much of the training was aimed at performing action scenes convincingly. The core of the sun is so hot that a piece of sun core the size of a pinhead would be enough to kill a person standing about 100 miles away. At the center of the sun, temperatures exceed 15 million degrees. At that extreme temperature, matter exists in a plasma state and releases an enormous amount of energy. An American television network used recorded bird sounds during golf tournaments. They stopped doing it when an expert bird watcher realized that they had played the sound of a bird species that was not native to the area where the tournament was taking place. Luxo Jr. was the first film produced by Pixar in 1986. It was the first short film made entirely with digital animation to be nominated for an Academy Award. The short shows 2 desk lamps playing with a ball and lasts only a couple of minutes. Its success was so great that the Luxo lamp became Pixar's official logo and appears at the beginning of almost all of its movies. Scientists concluded that the famous African gray parrot Alex had the intelligence of a 5-year-old human. He had a vocabulary of 150 words and could ask for fruits by name. He would get angry when he did not receive what he asked for. He could also identify colors, shapes, and quantities, and even understand concepts such as bigger, smaller, or the same, something very uncommon in animals. The first athlete disqualified from the Olympic Games for using banned substances was Hans Gunnar Liljenvall of Sweden in 1968. In Mexico, he had drunk 2 beers to calm his nerves before starting the shooting competition. Yoda, the Star Wars character, was created based partly on the appearance of Albert Einstein. Designer Stuart Freeborn, who created the original puppet, was partially inspired by the famous scientist's facial features to give the character a look of wisdom and old age. He also incorporated some traits from his own face, which explains part of the unique expression of the Jedi Master. In ancient Greek, ostrich is called Strauthocamelos, or sparrow camel. The name combines the words strauthos, meaning sparrow or small bird, and camelos, meaning camel. The ancient Greeks believed the animal had characteristics of both, the large, strong body of a camel and the bird form of a giant sparrow. In 1996, David Bowie released the single Telling Lies, which was the first song by a well-known artist to be available exclusively for online download. With the internet speeds of that time, it could take up to 15 minutes to download. Writing was independently invented in 3 places: the Middle East, China, and Central America. All other alphabets and writing systems are derived from or inspired by these 3, or they are incomplete. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform writing appeared more than 5,000 years ago. In China, the first characters appeared during the Shang dynasty, and in Mesoamerica, civilizations such as the Maya developed complex hieroglyphic systems used to record history, rituals, and astronomy. Harrison Ford suggested to George Lucas that Han Solo should sacrifice his life to save his friends in Return of the Jedi, but as we know, that never happened. Ford believed the character would have had a stronger ending with a final heroic act. Lucas decided to keep him alive because the movie was aiming for a more optimistic tone, and also because the character was one of the audience's favorites. Bambi Meets Godzilla is a short animated film considered a classic. It is number 38 on the list of the greatest cartoons of all time. The short lasts only about a minute and shows Bambi walking peacefully through the forest before encountering Godzilla in an unexpected twist that mixes humor and surprise. Only 3 places in the world have changed from driving on the right side to driving on the left side, which are East Timor, Okinawa, and Samoa. These changes usually occur for political or historical reasons, such as the influence of neighboring countries or former colonial administrations. In Samoa, for example, the change was made in 2009 to make it easier to import vehicles from Australia and New Zealand. When Trey Parker was asked about the ending of South Park, he answered, "We have been waiting to be canceled for 18 damn years." The series premiered in 1997, and since then has been known for its provocative humor. Despite the controversies, it has become one of the longest-running animated comedies on television. More paper is used in Japan for manga, which are Japanese comics, than for toilet paper. For decades, weekly and monthly manga magazines have had enormous print runs, sometimes millions of copies per edition. Many of them are printed on inexpensive, thick paper because they are meant to be read quickly and then recycled. Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, the presidents of the United States and the Soviet Union respectively in the 1980s, informally agreed to help each other and act together if an extraterrestrial invasion occurred on Earth. In a town in Germany called Fugurai, the rent has not increased since the year 1520. It can cost only $1 to live there for an entire year. Pack your bags. This small neighborhood in the city of Augsburg was founded by the Fugger family as housing for people with limited resources. Residents pay a symbolic annual rent and must follow certain community rules. Toy Story 2 was originally going to be released directly to video, but Pixar considered the script so good that it was released in theaters. During production, the project was almost completely reworked in less than a year, forcing the team to work intensely. The result exceeded all expectations, and the movie ended up becoming one of the biggest animated hits of 1999. The national anthem of Greece has 158 verses, but normally only 2 are sung. The anthem is based on the poem Hymn to Liberty, written in the 19th century by Dionysios Solomos. It is one of the longest national anthems in the world, although in official ceremonies, only the first verse is performed. The bottom of classic Converse shoes has felt, so they can be classified as slippers and therefore have lower import taxes. A small layer of soft material on the sole allows them to legally not be considered completely athletic shoes. This design detail was added for commercial reasons related to customs regulations. Before the 1960 movie Psycho was filmed, Alfred Hitchcock bought all the existing copies of the book so that no one would know the ending of the story. He also asked theaters not to allow people to enter after the movie had started, something very unusual at that time. According to mathematicians, there are 177,147 ways to tie a necktie, and you do not even know one. This number was calculated by researchers who analyzed all possible combinations of movements when tying a tie. The famous Windsor knot is only one among thousands, although most people always use the same one out of habit. When Matt LeBlanc auditioned for the role of Joey on the series Friends, he had only $11. In the final season, his salary was $1 million per episode. The success of the series turned the entire main cast into some of the highest paid stars on television, and the character of Joey ended up being one of the most popular during the 10 seasons. When the budget ran out during the filming of Mad Max, the original 1979 movie, director George Miller offered his own vehicle for one of the crash scenes. That is dedication. The production was so limited that many cars used in the film belonged to members of the film crew or to friends of the production. You only need 39 digits of pi to calculate the circumference of the observable universe with a margin of error smaller than the diameter of a hydrogen atom. Making the movie Titanic cost more than building the real ship itself. The 1997 film had a budget close to $200 million. Adjusted for inflation, building the original Titanic in 1912 would have cost less than producing the movie.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.